I've never said to anybody I ever trained, I don't think you're an actor. But I've thought it at times because
Hmm.
what makes an actor, I think you have to love telling stories and you have to love.
Terry, can you hear me, see me?
I can hear you and see you.
Terry,
Hi.
hey, thank you for the patience. I had one of those press junkets today, and they tell you at one time, and then 40 minutes later you're still waiting. So, thanks for your patience.
Sure. What was it for?
It was for a Hulu series.
That you're in?
No, no, I'm not in it. I'm
Oh,
just doing
you're the press
interviews.
guy trying to get it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's with
Well, what
Lily Gladstone and Riley Keough. So that's the one that's coming out in a couple weeks. So, uh,
great.
yeah, that's kind of a day-to-day thing for me. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
how's everything with you?
Everything's great. I'm very
Yeah.
busy. Just came back from mostly I'm here in Brooklyn, either
Hmm.
teaching at my studio or coaching a lot of famous people from time to time. And I just came back from a week in Vancouver, which was amazing. And I'm about to come out to LA to teach
That's
for the
great.
first time since 2019.
Oh wow. So what's I'd imagine you'd be there a lot more often. Is just coincidence or that kept you
Well,
from LA?
I mean, my home base is New York.
Hmm.
Um, and I do have, I'm an acting teacher who also does a lot of coaching, mostly for actors in leading roles
Hmm.
who have already got the part. So
Okay.
people like Sam Rockwell, Natasha Lyonne, Michelle Williams, Emmy Rossum, Leslie Bibb, Sacha Baron Cohen, Daniel Craig, Austin Butler, folks like that.
Hmm.
And for the most part, since COVID, but even before that, um, like Emmy, I did 9 seasons of Shameless with. And even though she is bi-coastal and has a place in New York, and we used to work in we did the audition for Shameless in New York. Once she got the part, it was shooting in LA. So there was no way for me to fly back and forth every week. So we did it back then, it was on Skype. Um, and then the pandemic just made more of that like all the time. So
Yeah.
most of my coaching now, even Daniel Craig, who lives in Brooklyn, we've only met a few times, and most of the time we're doing it because it's more convenient for him to do it on Zoom. So
Hmm. It's changed the
there,
game. Zoom's really
it's
changed.
it's
Like I
it's
said,
it's changed. It has, but I don't
yeah,
think I can teach very well on Zoom. It's not my favorite
interesting.
thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see
So
that. Same thing with interviews. Like you had those press junks
yeah,
in person, but you do them now Zoom. It's you miss that in-person connection and feel too with it
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. Especially
We
coaching
don't
for
know.
your end.
We don't know if either of us are wearing pants, for instance,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I like to work on, and it's similar to what I did in Vancouver and what I'm going to do in Atlanta soon.
Hmm.
LA, even though there's great theater in LA, there's great theater. Most of the P actors who are out there are there to work in the film and television industry.
Right.
And and so when I come out, I want to work on scripts from plays, really good language, and do it in a theater space and really have them work on that and really have an intense 1 week workshop where we really get their acting chops. So it's like boot camp.
Yeah. Man, I have so many questions for you just about it in general. I know we'll delve into it all. So how long have you run your studio, the Terry Knickerbocker studio out in Brooklyn? How long have you been operating it?
Well, I opened the studio in 2015,
Hmm.
so that's 8 years ago. And while I opened it, I was still simultaneously also teaching at NYU Tisch School of the Arts, which I
Okay.
taught at a long time and which I'm a graduate of. And before that, for many, many years, I taught at what's now a competitor, but was my home base for many years, the William Esper Studio. So I've been teaching acting for 40 years almost. Yeah.
Wow. How did you get into it, the teaching part? Were you an actor initially that kind of found his way to teaching? You've been doing this for a while, it seems like. What was sort of the call or the light bulb moment that went off? Like, yeah, I like this teaching thing.
these are good questions. I was an actor. That's all I thought I was going to be, was an actor. And then
Hmm.
my wife at the time, who we're now not together, and I have another wife and two wonderful children. But at the time, this was back in the mid '80s, um, was supposed to do a play that she wrote and was going to be directed by another director, a wonderful director and a friend of ours named Anne Bogart. And then Anne got another job, and so she said, "Would I direct it?" And I was like, "I don't know. That's nice. Thank you for believing in me. I'll try." And then I had that light bulb moment about directing. I was there like, "Oh, I like directing even more than I like acting, because there's some part of me that's a control freak and likes to be in charge of, you're not, when you're an actor, you're not supposed to ever have any, you're not supposed to tell other actors anything about what they should be doing or anything like that. Like that's a no-no.
Right.
But of course, every actor has feelings about that. Sometimes they say, "Oh, it'd be so nice if you were a little more angry at me there, or our kiss lasted longer." And but that's you're not there to be the director. So being a director, I got to be in charge of the lights and the costumes and the sets and the sound and what was happening, and choose the plays sometimes. So it's like, oh, this is actually what I want to do. And so I started doing that and got some success doing that,
Hmm.
but quickly discovered that you can't really make a living as a theater director in New York. I mean, if you're lucky enough to have a long-running musical like The Lion King or Wicked, you get a residual check, and that's nice. Excuse me, but I was never going to be directing musicals. I like to direct straight plays.
Hmm.
So then I was there like, how the hell am I going to fund, keep my life going, pay my expenses? And I discovered that one of the ways that directors supplement their income is by teaching. So I went back to my teacher, William Esper, who's a brilliant teacher and an associate of Sanford Meisner. He died a few years ago, but he's just one of the icons of teaching Meisner and teaching acting in New York, and said, "I want to teach acting," originally not because I love teaching acting, but to support my directing.
Hmm.
And he said, "Well, that's nice, but I don't need any teachers. I don't have any extra work for any teachers. I got all the teachers I need." And I just said, "Well, how about if I just sit behind you until you ask me to leave?" And that ended up being about 30 years later. So, and somewhere in there, that light bulb that you asked me about happened, where I was still directing and I was teaching to support that. And then at a certain point, I sort of fell out of love with directing and got enough, because sometimes teachers are also, when you're working on scenes, directing those scenes. So I really found that what I truly, truly loved was helping actors to figure out how to do it well.
Hmm.
So that light bulb moment happened at some point, but I don't know when. It may be 5 or 6 years in.
It all kind of led to each other. You see, that's how life is. There's different
Yeah,
directions. You
yeah,
think you want to do something, and then you just find your way. It's one of those things where being patient and waiting sort of for your road to open up. It
yes,
happens in the most
yes,
mysterious ways.
yes, it does. Yeah, it's kind of like everybody, life, if you look at it backwards, here you are doing this conversation with me, but I could ask you the same question. Like, how did that all happen? How did
Mhm.
you get to be that you're doing press junkets and into film and TV? Because I'm sure the breadcrumbs are there.
100%. I started out acting, Terry. That's
Yeah,
how it
yeah,
was.
yeah, yeah.
Doing it when I was younger, then majoring in college and theater and all that. And then I really started liking improv. I did improv. I took an improv class and I joined an improv group. I kind of found my way and I loved doing that. And it was a natural thing for me to think on the fly. Like I got excitement off of sort of being on stage and having the unexpected happen versus having like a script and memorizing and doing plays. I like the spontaneity of what it was doing improv. And through improv, I learned that, I can connect with people and I'm good at listening through my acting skills. I've always been a good listener in that sense. And I'm like, wow, I kind of am good in interviewing. I had this opportunity to write for this movie website because I love movies, and it just all fell into place. They kind of threw me in an interview. I'm like, I don't know how to interview. I've never professionally done it, but it was immediate. I just connected with people, and I listened, and I had just a natural curiosity about humans and their
Yeah,
work and all that. And it all kind of, I used my improv skills of always being on the fly and kind of keeping a conversation alive. And it really happened. Where I became this
yeah,
sort of thing, you know?
it's fun. Yeah,
Mhm. It's wild how things happen that way. You specialize in a Meisner technique. I mean, there's several different techniques there. What appealed to you about how did you make that connection with Meisner? How did it speak to you that sort of technique that you wanted to teach others and connect with?
yeah. Well, first of all, I'll say a couple things. It doesn't matter what technique you study.
Hmm.
Nobody cares. Nobody, I don't think anybody says, you know what, I want to see some method acting today. Really? I'd much rather see some Stella Adler or like
Yeah.
people want to see, and in any good project, I bet if you took a poll of all the actors and say, what's your approach to acting or where did you train? It would be all over the place. And yet somehow good acting is what we really care about. So hopefully any good technique is going to get an actor to be able to turn a script into rich, interesting, alive, truthful behavior and able to also improvise in that way that you're talking about and be spontaneous and work from moment to moment. So nobody cares what technique you study. So then what I how it came for me, and actually nobody wants to study acting either. No one wants to be an acting student. They want to be a good actor,
Hmm.
right? And just like you want to be a dentist, you don't want to go to dental school, but to get to be a dentist, you got to go to dental school. So the
Yeah.
purpose of training is to set you up to have the skills to be confident, to be able to do it well consistently. And I kind of came to it out of fear. I went to NYU, as I mentioned before, and graduated from the Tisch School of the Arts. Incredible program, one of the world's best programs.
Oh yeah.
Had a lot of great teachers, and it was kind of a smorgasbord. I had a lot of different things that were offered to me. It wasn't one necessarily particular approach. And graduated, and I found and started to work. And I found that my work was inconsistent. So that depending on the material, or my connection to the material. One week I'd be flying high and feeling like, yeah, I nailed it. And then the next week I'd try something and I'd be lost, like I didn't have a GPS. And that inconsistency scared me. And if we go back to dentists, can you imagine seeing a dentist who one week knows what they're doing, and then you go the next week and they go, what's a drill?
Hmm.
Right?
For the
Like,
patient, for sure.
right. And I found that there were a lot of actors who had the same kind of feeling like, I don't know, my work is hit or miss. It's almost like mystical. Whereas you wouldn't see that necessarily with a musician or a ballet dancer. So there's something about those performing arts that not all acting training solidifies. And I now think I have an understanding of why, but I didn't at the time. And so I was just like kind of freaked out. Like, how am I going to be as good as the people I care about, if I don't know it some days and I do know it some days?
Uh-huh.
And around that time, I saw this actor. I was working backstage at a small theater in New York, and I saw him every night. And he was extraordinary and consistent, and was doing the kind of work, the quality of work that I really respected and admired and got turned on by, but also the consistency interested me. Like he kept nailing it, it wasn't a flash in the pan. And I said, hey man, how do you do that? And he said, well, I studied with this guy, Bill Esper. It's the Meisner technique. And, everyone kind of knows about the Meisner technique now, but it was kind of a secret back then. There's even a documentary about Meisner where they call him like acting's best kept secret. Um, and so I went to meet with Bill Esper, and he said, well, it's a 2-year program. And I just done 4 years at NYU, and I didn't think twice
Hmm.
because I wanted to be good. And if that was going to get me to be good, I was all in. And I said a little bit arrogantly, I said, so as a graduate of NYU, where will I start in your school?
Hmm.
And he said, at the beginning. I said, well, but I mean, as a graduate of NYU, where am I going to start? Maybe you didn't know my credentials. And he said, what are you, deaf? You're going to start at the beginning. NYU is a good school. Congratulations, you got in. You went there. But you're here for a reason. And I don't know what works and what doesn't work with anybody. So we all start at the beginning because we don't know where the holes are.
Uh-huh.
And what makes Meisner, to me, different, unique, and so powerful is Meisner was a pianist, Sanford Meisner. He was a trained pianist in addition to being a powerful man of the theater. And I was saying before that musicians don't have this issue. So when I studied at NYU, we started with scene study. That
Mhm.
was the first thing we did. Day one, Streetcar Named Desire. That would be like starting the piano with Beethoven. But you don't do that. Even if you want to play Beethoven, you start with middle C, scales, arpeggios, the basics, the building blocks. Same with dancing. You don't start ballet with Swan Lake. You started with first position, second position, plie. And so Meisner somehow figured out a way to start to train actors by going to something very basic in the beginning. And it builds up to be able to do Chekhov or whatever it is you want to do. Um, and that to me was incredibly freeing and to me exposed an inherent flaw in most American actor training, which is that they start with scene study. That to me makes no sense. Just like a lot of people would say, oh, I want to be an actor. Let me start with how to audition. Well, that's cuckoo, right? Why don't you learn how to act first?
Yeah.
So
You
the
can do that
two, the
audition well, right?
yeah, the 2 years with Bill Esper doing the Meisner technique changed everything for me. And I really felt at that point that I had a solid toolkit that took me from soup to nuts and that I could rely on that thing that brought me there in the first place, which was I didn't have consistency. I found an approach that allowed me to do consistently quality work. And that was incredible.
Do you feel acting in general is something that's it's a completely learned skill set, or some people just kind of have natural ability to pick it up maybe quicker or have that charisma sort of thing? Like, how much of it is a learned skill set and how much of it is sort of a natural, you have it sort of ability? Like some athletes are, very athletic just because they are very athletic, but then they need to learn the playbook or whatnot, all that. How much of acting is natural sort of ability that you bring out of you versus a learned ability from scratch?
I think everybody has a zone of genius,
Mm,
and everybody, to get a little bit mystical or philosophical, I sort of believe everybody was born for a reason. And to lead a worthy life, if you can find that thing that causes you great gladness and also makes the world happy to receive it, that's the sweet spot. Now, I'm not really answering your question, but I sort of am when I talk about a zone of genius.
I know what
So
you mean.
it's clear that Mozart, for instance, who was writing symphonies at the age of 6 or 7, had some natural, and his father was a musician, so he was around it even before he was born. He was hearing the music in his mother's belly, had an inherent affinity and talent for music, and then had to learn something about music as well. I think there's an incredible documentary about Steph Curry. Steph
Mm-hmm.
Curry, Golden State Warriors, his dad was a professional basketball player. So he was around it. And it starts with him like around age 13 in a documentary. It's on Apple TV. If you haven't
Yeah,
seen it, I
fantastic.
recommend. It's amazing. So here's a guy who had talent, obviously, but needed work. And so talent is what you're born with. And if you have an affinity for it, if it's your thing, if you like it, great. Like most actors start without acting training. I did. You know, you do that play in high school or grade school, and
Mhm.
other people want to do sports or whatever. Like you gravitate towards what gives you pleasure. And if it turns out it's the thing that you're really good at and you'd like to be able to do better, that's where training comes in, right? So some people are born to be surgeons. Well, they have some natural affinity for healing and for biology and the body and whatever, but then they got to go to med school. So I think it's a combination.
Mhm.
I think
Interesting.
it's hard. Like I've never said to anybody I ever trained, I don't think you're an actor. But I've thought it at times because
Mhm.
what makes an actor, I think you have to love telling stories and you have to love fantasy. You have to love coming to life and you have to love living out stories, not just telling stories, but living out stories. If you don't enjoy that, why would you want to do it? And if you
Right.
don't have some innate gift around that,
That makes sense because the road
yeah,
is tough, you know, and you need to be able
yeah.
to really love it to do it. 100%. That's well said there. You know, you mentioned working with Austin Butler, and there's so much talk about. I don't know if you worked with him when he was doing the Elvis film, but that accent, you know, that stayed with Austin. Any insight you have to that, or you know, working with Austin in general, and sort of was that a thing that he couldn't, in a sense, kick it? That once he got it in him, you know, it took a while for him to kind of release that Elvis accent.
You know, Austin and I worked before Elvis, and we worked on now three projects after Elvis. We're working on one now,
Hmm.
but I didn't work on Elvis with him. He lived inside Elvis for 2 years, right? Um, and because he had to be someone who was so iconic and famous and known, he really had to be able to improvise with that voice. I know there's a lot of talk on the internet about, you know, he can't lose it. I mean, Austin is an obsessive actor, and I love Austin. He's a great guy, and he's so passionate and so committed. And we worked together on Dune 2. We worked together on this film that's coming out called The Bike Riders that I
Right.
think will be out in June. With another one of my clients, Boyd Holbrook. We worked on that as well. And now we're working on this Ari Aster movie with Joaquin Phoenix and Emma Stone and Pedro Pascal. I think however he talks in life, I mean, Austin kind of was a little bit like that because I worked with him before Elvis, and he had kind of that voice was sort of there, weirdly.
Mhm.
You know, he grew up in California, but you know, I'm not sure what part of California, but Merle Haggard was from Bakersfield, and he's a country and western singer. So they're, you know, if you grow up in the valley or something, you might start to sound just like someone from around there. There's a lot of the South around there. So Andy's an obsessive actor, and he was doing it for 2 years. So
Mhm.
sometimes things stick with you.
You know, you have these sort of very well known and established actors coming to you. Do you feel there's always something? I mean, I think it's great that actors, you know, even accomplished ones like Austin and the ones you mentioned, that they still continue to training because it, you know, you still need to sharpen the iron, no matter how successful or you know the offers might be coming in. You don't have to audition, but you still need to perform and deliver. Do you feel sort of when they come in, they're open minded to direction with you and you know maybe finding holes in their game because I think it takes some you know you need to remove the ego too to be able to do that to better yourself and to be able to be open to sort of you know I wouldn't say criticism but just you know certain things that you can brush up on. How do you feel these established actors you've worked with are receptive to coaching and learning more and not sort of having it figured out because we never really do.
That's a great question. Well, first of all, the people who work with me must enjoy working with me because otherwise, for them, I mean, there are certain famous people whose names I won't mention who worked with me once, and then I wasn't their cup of tea, you
Mhm.
know, and maybe it was because what you said, they didn't want to be directed or they had a better idea or we just didn't see eye to eye. And I can't say that I'm always right. I mean, like working with Daniel Craig is interesting because I'll have an idea, and then we're working right now on Knives Out 3, and we worked on The Glass Onion together as well, but not on Knives Out 1, interestingly enough. And also worked on a play he did on Broadway and this movie that is going to come out at Cannes next year called Queer. And he's an incredibly smart fellow. And so sometimes I'll say, well, what do you think about this? Or I'll even say, I think it should be like that. And they'll go, well, I have a different idea. And so it's a dialogue.
Hmm.
And I have to make sure my ego is not in the game either. Like that, because we both want the same thing, which is when the director says action, that he feels really good about what he's showing up with. So in that sense, anybody who comes to me is saying, can you help me put together a performance that I'm going to feel good about? And I'm, I'm their sounding board and I have ideas, but it's definitely collaborative. So hopefully they're open to that. And I think actors need coaching these days, whether it's with a coach you pay or even just a friend, because there's no rehearsal anymore. The budgets just don't allow for film and TV to have rehearsal for the most part. So you kind of have to show up ready to go. And that's what's expected. It's rare that they go, okay, we'll have 2 weeks of rehearsal like in the old days. Occasionally, but only if you're number one, two, or three on a call sheet, and even then, not all the time.
Hmm.
So I do find that they're open. I don't think they're coming to me for training. I do make a bit of a distinction between training and coaching in the sense that my school is about people learning how to do it. I'm not teaching Daniel Craig how to act. He knows how to act.
Hmm.
But we are working with his incredible skill set on how to illuminate this script and make it as rich and vibrant and alive and fun and interesting for him as possible. So
Hmm.
I'm more of a sounding board.
As I wrap things up, I know I can go on for hours with you here with questions and just fantastic conversation. Um, Obviously, you're a prominent acting
I
coach.
gotta say, Jim, I
Yeah,
like your energy. You're a bubbly guy. I can see
I
why
am
you're
naturally,
successful.
Terry.
I like it. It's enjoyable. It's a lot of fun.
I appreciate that. That's, I guess, if there's skill sets to be had, I always say my top skill set is this energy and passion. I bring it
It's fantastic.
no
It's so
matter what I do.
infectious. It's very appealing. It'd be hard to be mad at you, I think.
Well, believe me, it happens. But I try to be positive, upbeat, and you know what? I think it comes naturally, actually, Terry, because I enjoy what I do, and I'm excited about
Yeah,
hearing stories. I enjoy connecting with people and hearing your background and what you have to share. It naturally energizes me and excites me. So it just kind of flows out of me, and I'm open to letting it flow.
that's great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Um, where can I'm curious how these kind of high-end clients come to you. Is it a referral thing? Do you take on everyone, or you sort of sometimes maybe don't feel it's a good fit with certain actors? How do they kind of find you and come to you? I'm curious about that aspect. Besides, of course,
It's
being a
it,
known acting
you
coach.
know that thing, was it 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Yeah.
So I've been working with Sam Rockwell, whose name I haven't mentioned yet, and he was not only the best man at my wedding,
Oh,
my second
fantastic.
wedding, and one of my very, very good friends, but we've been working together for over 30 years. And so many people, including Daniel Craig, including Natasha Lyonne, including Chris Messina, so many people have come to me through Sam, and Sam just saying, "Hey man, Sasha Baron Cohen, they worked out at the gym together." And he said, "Hey man, you got to work with my coach." So some of it's Sam, some of it's agents who've got me on their roster. Not that I've asked to be on their roster, but they've heard about me as one of, there are lots of coaches.
Hmm.
Um, so we get, requests that come in through the email or through text or whatever. Hey man, I'm open. And uh, sometimes when people hear how much I charge for private coaching, they get scared because it's not cheap. I think it's worth it, and it's not the highest out there,
Hmm.
which is why it's good if it's already a role you have. If you have to do it for auditions, I see we have 57 seconds left.
No, we got
Um,
9 minutes left, so it dies
okay,
out on us.
okay,
So
yeah,
we'll wrap
yeah.
up
I
at
gotta
that
go.
time.
I have to go teach in a minute, but
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
I don't. You know, if you're doing it for an audition, that's a tricky thing because there's never any guarantee that even if you do an amazing self-tape, that you're going to get the role, even though that may lead to something else. So I tend to do it with people who already have parts.
Mhm.
And I'm always open to meeting new people. I'm fairly full. I did turn down a few people this week just because my schedule's full now, but that doesn't mean not only because they needed it really fast, but I'm always interested to meet new people doing interesting projects. And I'm also really excited to come to LA. That's where you are, right?
No, I'm in Chicago actually. So
Oh, okay. You're in
I've lived in LA.
you're,
I'll be moving back out there. My stuff is in
okay,
storage, but
okay, that's cool.
currently in Chicago,
Yeah,
where I from
yeah.
originally. As you can
I'm
tell,
going
probably by
out.
the accent.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, the Bears. We talked about the coaching, and I have this like bifurcated professional life. So I do coach working actors who aren't looking to learn how to act on projects, and you can reach out to me. My studio is terryknickerbockerstudio.com, and you could write to Terry at terryknickerbockerstudio.com about that. And most of the time I'm here, I have a summer intensive, which is where I first met Sam years ago, teaching the summer intensive at the Esper Studio. And a lot of people come for that. It's like 6 week kind of boot camp. And
Mhm.
then the main meat and potatoes is what I described before that I did with my teacher, Bill Esper, which is this 2 year conservatory program that starts in the fall and starts in January. And we have an amazing studio and wonderful staff and wonderful faculty, not just me, and an amazing student body. And I would humbly and not so humbly uh, compare our program to any program that's out there and say we're as good as whatever's out there. I mean, it's a really, really special experience. And you will leave here a confident actor. Yeah.
I think that's what everyone would want initially because we're so
Yeah.
much in our head coming in, and especially kind
Yeah.
of beginning actors, leaving a confident actor. Confidence is the number one thing, Terry. I think you can accomplish a lot with confidence. So,
Yeah.
fantastic work with all these actors. Sam Rockwell's complete transformation of his career. I mean, we've seen him just be at that top level and over the years, and just great work all around. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and appreciate you taking the time to share all
I
these
love
things.
your energy, man. I love it. I love it. I need that neon light that you have
There
behind
you
you for
go.
me
That's an
to
Amazon
put my
buy.
name. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. What a pleasure to meet you and to talk to you. And I hope we can do it again.
Yeah, likewise, Terry. Thank you so much.
All
Go
right.
teach the
Take
world
care.
and make
I
them great
will.
actors.
You're fun. Take care. Bye
Take
bye.
care. Bye bye.